Welcome to another edition of the Sim Racing Garage. I'm Barry Rowland, and in this episode, we'll be reviewing the upgrade kit for Sim Racing Studios' Double the Fan Power Wind Kit, the same kit we reviewed here back in March of this year. This kit gives the user more flexibility in the way you can get airflow delivered to the places you need on your rig. Now let's put this kit through the SRG review process and see how it performs. So let's get to it. So now let's take a closer look at what you get in this tube upgrade kit for the Power Wind system from Sim Racing Studio. First, really there's not a whole lot to this, as you might imagine. We've got a PLA printed piece on the back that goes on the fan. We have a PLA printed piece on the front, and it is, they call this an air straightener, and sometimes I call this a diffuser for some reason. I don't know why. But anyway, so they call it an air straightener. And then we have the tube. The tube is 4 feet long, and you can see on the inside here it's got the aluminum insulation going on here so that it reflects heat, I guess, if you needed that kind of function for it. Almost looks like a tube that you would have on your dryer at home. And of course, we always see these tubes in race cars where they're directing airflow to the driver or to other parts of the car that need to be cooled by regular ambient air or forced ambient air. So this is, the straightener here is a 3D printed unit out of PLA, I believe. Looks like PLA to me. It feels like PLA. I'm going to try to get this one out of here. Let's see what it looks like. There we go. Yeah, so that's a closer look at it. And I'm sure it took them a lot of different tries to get the right design for these little holes here. And you can see they're 5-sided shapes. And yeah, what this does, obviously, instead of, if you just had this throwing air out, as soon as the air left the front of this tube, it would just disperse. And what this does, the straightener, this actually concentrates it so it stays together longer as it comes out, which obviously is going to increase the speed and what we feel against our bodies by using one of these instead of just doing this. Now, this will actually work, but this will improve it, no doubt. Right? So, yeah, PLA printed units, very solid feeling. This did a good job. There's not a lot of strings hanging off. If you guys ever printed PLA stuff, you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, pretty good job there. There's really no groove there. I thought there might be a groove there to catch this zip tie on the other part of the tube there, but it doesn't. It probably doesn't need it because this is long enough or deep enough so it goes deep enough into our hose that it doesn't create an issue. And hopefully I won't create an issue by pulling that off. I might have to put this back on with another zip tie. But that's no big deal, like I said. But I had to take it out and show you guys. Yeah, I think what I'm going to do is just cut the zip tie off of here, put it back on, and put another zip tie on. No big deal. So the back part, that has a flange here, as you can see. And it also has kind of a cone shape to it as it goes onto this tube. And that's going to fit onto the fan itself, right? So this fits in there and so that it is attached directly to our fan and then throws air out. Easy enough. Now on this particular fan, I have another straightener or diffuser. Well, they call it a straightener. It actually, I did a review on these back in March for the Power Wind system, and yeah, it definitely improves the speed of the air coming off your fan because it really concentrates that beam of wind. And again, it has kind of a conical shape to it as the first it focuses the wind and then spits it out. So this actually doubled the airspeed. If you go back and look at my review I did back in March on the Power Wind system, that yeah, it doubled the airspeed coming off of this fan. Now, they actually make this or something very similar to this, but it has a groove on the top of it. And I'm going to show you a picture of it here. And that allows you to put this onto your fan and then put the tube. So instead of having this attached to your fan, you'll have this flange and then you'll have this straightener. So it will concentrate the air coming right off the fan and dumping it into the tube. And then with this straightener, whoops, the one's off right now. With this straightener on the front, I can imagine that it would be even a better performance. I would think so anyway, because it made such a big difference on the fan itself when I actually did the review before in March. So yeah, you can actually order that. I think it's another 15 bucks or something. But yeah, I wish I'd had those because I probably, you know, like I said, I'll probably say that during the review a couple of times because I would have liked to have tested that because I think that is something that would really increase the wind speeds. And we'll see what the wind speeds are once we do a little quick test on this thing. Right. So there is one other piece that you can get, and this actually comes with the kit. If you buy this tube as part of your kit when you buy the fans also, so it comes as a complete kit with the tubes, the fans, everything, then this will come with that. And this is actually another $60. And what this is a base that is going to allow you to attach 2 fans into one mountable unit, which is very neat. And we'll see that because I did mount this to my rig, or actually to behind my rig, so you guys will be able to see this. Again, a PLA 3D printed unit. Yeah, $60. You guys might be thinking, yeah, that's a lot of money for this. And it is, but it probably takes a very long time. If you've ever printed anything in 3D printing, it probably takes a very long time to print this out. And they've done a very good job on it. Something this long, you can see the thin part here, something this long and thin is not easy to get straight. And this is very straight, because the heat tends to make something long and thin kind of warp off the bed of the printer. But that's just 3D printing stuff. And any of you guys, like I said, if any of you guys were involved in 3D printing, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, very good job on this. Very clean. It's got a couple of strings off of it, coming off of it, but not a big deal. I like the way they've got the Sim Racing Studio raised letter thing going on there. And of course they do it on their other pieces too. But what you'll have to do with this is, obviously there's some electronics in our fan. You can see the ports in the back here. We got an electrical and a data port back here. And there's a little PCB board. And we'll see that when we actually do we actually convert these over to this stand. And yeah, you're gonna have to pull the PCB out, which is a couple of screws in there, I believe. And you will see that how hard that is, or easy that is once we get to it. But that way you'll be mounting the PCB boards in here, right, into these little holes. And also you want to make sure that your connectors are lined up with the back part here. Not that difficult. And then of course we have holes here on both sides for mounting the fan, and we'll secure it using the screws that we use here and the screws that we use to hold the back of this one, because I'm gonna be taking this off because I can't really do anything with it. I was thinking about maybe trying to stick this on here and yeah, just run longer screws or a spacer or something maybe, but yeah, I probably won't. I'll probably end up messing something up if I try to do that, because it's just not designed to do that. But again, I wish I did have the ones that they make now for this. Also, you can get this diffuser, or rather straightener, with a 3D, or not a 3D, but a GoPro mount on it that's detachable. So you can actually put your GoPro mount on it, and then you can use that to mount it and also to direct the airflow where you need it. Very cool trick. So yeah, they make the GoPro and they make this little straightener here. So I just don't have those. I kind of wish that I had gotten those too, but I didn't. Anyway, so what we'll do is, really that's all there is to it. And what we'll do when we come back is start disassembling, or go ahead and get these disassembled. I'm going to take these off, and then I'll show you me taking the PCB board out, what that entails, and then what it takes to get them mounted into our little mount here. Right, so we'll do that when we come back. All right, let's go ahead and switch out this fan from its housing here and mount it here, just so you guys can see how that works if you decide that this is something you want to do. Now, because I have the front diffuser off already, two of the screws on this side that usually hold this housing, and I showed you in a closer look, you can see the tabs in there. We only have 2 screws in it now because the other screws are out when I took this off. So just 2 screws to take this off, and there is a little PCB board in here, and we'll see that once we get there. So let's go ahead and pull this off, and I'll use my fat Phillips head for this. I think the size of this thing is, it's a PH2. See that? So this is for the bigger type of Phillips screws, and these come out pretty easily. And you can see these are really nothing more than the computer case. If you ever build a PC, you know what I'm talking about. A computer case screw. And it's got those aggressive threads in it that'll go into a fan housing when we're putting fans in our computers. And it's a little flathead flush fit deal. Right. So let's go ahead and get the other one out. And everything should come apart. Remember, we got wires in here from the fan motor going down to this PCB board. So you be careful, don't just yank it out, because yeah, that could be a disaster. Or drop this part, it could yank on the wires and cause a problem, even though this is a really good design PCB board in here. And we're going to go ahead and take that out. You can see it's 2 Phillips screws in there that need to come out, and then this board should just come straight out, but we'll see. And what I'm going to do here is, this screwdriver is too big for those screws, so I got a smaller one here, and this is a PH1 for those of you keeping score. So we'll go ahead and pull these 2 screws out, and hopefully there's no glue or anything on here to keep the PCB from just coming out very nicely. Now here's a surprise. This is a machine head screw, or not a machine head, a machine screw. Let's see if I can get it to focus here. See the fine threads on that? So usually you only see fine threads like that going into metal that's been tapped for threads, obviously. So yeah, I'm surprised to see that they used these screws into attaching that PCB into this part here. So yeah, that's interesting. So we'll go ahead and pull the other one out. See what it looks like. All right. Same thing there. So now our board should just, yep, it's flopping around in there. Let's get my screwdriver out of the way. So then we have this housing, and we can just put that aside because we're done with it. And we'll just take another look at this cool little PCB board they have here. And I think you guys can read that there. And you see we've got a diode, a transistor for power, and of course the power connector, and a RJ45 for signaling that goes to the fan. Pretty simple little PCB here, actually. So of course now what we want to do is mount this PCB into this housing. And of course we want it to line up the way we want it to, or rather, we need it to rather, so that our ports will match the ports over here. And it just kind of sits in there like that, so you can see that. And again, if you didn't see it in the closer look, there's little lugs in there with holes in them to accept those screws, so we can screw it down. But there is an issue here, and I wanted to show you this. And this is typical, really, of when 3D printed parts come out of the printer. And I've printed a lot of parts, so I know that sometimes the holes aren't going to be the same, or there's you got to trim something off, or maybe open something up a little bit. Well, in this case, we've got, where's my example here, this one, because I've already messed with the other one. See how big that hole is? I don't know how well this is going to show up on video, but this one actually is bigger in diameter than the hole over here on this lug. And this one will actually fit the screw we took out, right? But this one is just too small, and it would never fit the screw. So not a big deal, really. It's really easy to fix. You just got to find the correct drill bit, which I have already found. And the board comes right out a little bit. We're just going to open up the hole. And I'm actually going to open up the hole over here because I just tested this one over on this side. Because I just tested that one to make sure that the bit wasn't too big, it was going to be all right. So all you got to do is get in there and just, I don't know how well this is going to show up, me trying to hold it and drill at the same time. But I've just slowly drill it. You don't need to drill real fast because you don't want to drill out the other side of it, apparently. Or obviously, not apparently. So yeah, then I'll go ahead and pull back on it when I'm drilling, so I'll see how that goes. And you can see we've got some of that filament, PLA filament. It kind of crushes and just drops off. So now what I want to do, now my hole is bigger, I want to take one of these screws and I'll just pre-tap them, if you will. And I'm just going to use the screw to function as a tap so we can put threads in these holes before I actually put the PCB board in there and have to putting a lot of pressure on it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm lining up with that hole, and hopefully that drill bit was big enough. And I'm just going to keep pressure on the back of the screwdriver and kind of just push down on it so I can cut threads into that hole. And it should allow me to do that. It looks like it's working. Right. See how far down it'll go. Because this PCB board is not that thick, so it does need to be able to go down a bit. And I think that'll do. So there it is. So now this lug here will have the threads pre-cut in it. So when I put the PCB on top of it, then yeah, it should present no issue whatsoever of going down and tightening down. And another thing, when you're actually putting screws in PLA or any kind of plastic for that matter, you want to be very careful. You don't want to over torque the screw because it will strip out the plastic in a minute or a second, not a minute. Depends on how long it takes you to screw it in there, I guess. So, and actually that screw, I can feel how warm it is from going into that PLA. So this is some pretty tough material. If it's heating up the screw as we're going in and cut the threads. Now you're not going to be able to see this, but I can just see it when I took that screw out. Now there's actually threads down in that lug. So all we got to do is take the same screw, and I'll go over to the second lug and do the same thing. And just keep a little pressure on it as I'm pushing down. Really not that hard to do. But you do want to keep it straight. You want to make sure it doesn't go off at an angle, because if it does, then you're going to have a problem getting it flush with that lug on the top, and you'll never get your PCB tightened down like you want it to. Okay, so we'll go ahead and back it out now. All right, see, that wasn't so hard. And again, with PLA printed stuff, you do run into these kind of things, but you can see how easy it is to fix it. So we'll put our drill aside now that it has done its job. And now what we're going to do is just go ahead and put the PCB in here and line up our holes here with the top, and hopefully this will line up with our other holes. So let's see how we did here. And it's hard for you to see this because of the way I have to do this to put these screws in, but you guys get the idea, I'm sure. Look at that, going in just like it's supposed to. Now, before we get it too tight on one side, we want to make sure that we can get lined up on the other side. And it looks like we can. Wow, this is actually working out pretty good. When I first saw the holes like that, I was wondering, going, hope I don't have to do a lot of engineering here to get this thing to work. But yeah, it seems to be doing okay. In fact, I'm kind of, there we go. I think it's going now. There we go. So again, don't over torque it when we get down to the tightening point. Just kind of feel this, because again, this PCB is not going to be putting a lot of stress trying to come off of this piece here. There's just not going to be, because there's not going to be tension on these wires or anything pulling against it, so you really don't have to torque this down a lot. Just get a good snug on it, because you don't want to rip out the threads. And yeah, there we go. Oops, I bumped into my transistor there. You don't want to do that either. Be careful when you're mucking around with this stuff, because you can cause yourself some dramas pretty quickly, because I actually bent that transistor, a power transistor, over a bit, but it looks okay. So now, all we've got to do, hopefully, if all of our, now again, when we put this down, you want to kind of route your wire down lower so it stays out of the way as I'm bringing this fan down on top, like that. There we go. See that? Cool. So now all we've got to do is start putting our screws in. And the side that's blowing air out is this way, whoops, because that's always the way computer fans work. Where the frame is, it always blows out that end, and typically, not always, I mean, I've actually seen fans that were a little different for whatever reason, but most of them, this means this is the intake side of the fan and the other side's the exhaust. Right, so you just want to make sure that you got that kind of lined up. And we're going to be putting this on the other side of the fan, right? So yeah, that's where we want the fan, or rather the air, to be blowing. So now I'm going to get my bigger screwdriver and start with, I'm going to just go ahead and secure this fan to the housing with the screws we took out before. Now again, these actually screws, remember, these have the aggressive thread on them for cutting into plastic. So this one, I don't think I'm going to have to drill. In fact, let me just kind of fit it up there and see how it's looking. Yeah, that's just going to go in like it should, it looks like. Yeah. All right, so we'll go ahead and get one of those started and see how it's looking. Yeah, these self-tapping threads that go into the plastic really do a good job, as we know if you've ever used them before. Right, so that one's in, easy enough. And these holes look like they're lining up to like a champ here. So well done here on the 3D printing for this one. All right, now again, this is not going to be totally secure because again, you want to snug it up. You don't want to put too much tension on this because once you strip that, if we strip those plastic out in there with these screws, you know, we're going to be in a world of hurt. In fact, this one's now that I'm looking at it, you can see that one didn't line up, did it? Well, that is interesting. Let's see here. Let me go ahead and pull it out and take a look. And again, this is the kind of thing you run into, but yeah, it looks like it's lining up with the hole okay. So let me redo it. I'm going to actually put some pressure on the top of this fan now and make sure it's good and flat. Let's see if I can catch that hole this time. Yeah, it feels like I caught the hole. Yes, see, we caught the hole that time. So we fixed that just by realigning it and putting pressure on the top of it as we went in with the screw. And I'll put a little more pressure on this because I'm going to get a final tighten on it because it did go in. And there we have it. So our ports are lined up, so all electronics and electricals should work just fine. And now what we're going to do is go ahead and, well, I'll go ahead and do it now, but I'll probably end up taking it back off because I'm actually got to find a place to mount this whole thing when I put the two fans on it. So, but when I do, and I put these hoses on, once I've done that and I'm going to put the hoses on, I'm going to use these long screws that came out of this diffuser on the front of here. This diffuser was sitting on here when it was just sitting on my rig over there. So now we're just going to do the same thing, but we're going to be using this in its stead. So, and again, yeah, this will actually thread through here, it looks like. Yeah, this is kind of it's kind of wobbly because it's so thin. This stuff is not really thick. I think I've measured this out a little over 1 millimeter. So not very thin, but it doesn't need to be real thick to hold this in and do what we want it to do. So I'm going to go ahead and start it in here. Get that one started, then we'll go into get another one started. Right, so you guys get the idea here, and what I'm going to do when we come back is I'll go ahead and have all 4 of these screws in here, and we'll see what the final piece looks like. So we're back now, and we have the adapter securely attached to the fan now. So now when the fan blows, it will be blowing air down our tube. And I can already feel the air coming out of it. And pretty simple. Really not much to this. And I'm not sure how this comes from. I imagine that this probably comes assembled. The 2 fans will be attached to this if you bought the whole kit and you didn't already have a wind kit from Sim Racing Studio, and you would just be attaching these to it because of just for shipping purposes, I would imagine. Plus, I'm sure they don't want everybody having to install the PCBs into this particular bracket. Right, so there it is. Looks pretty cool, actually. Looks a little better than I thought it would look. Looks very functional. And yeah, once you have this attached here, this tube actually, you know, it feels a little more sturdy, more substantial. And again, we have a pretty long reach here to where we can go, and now we can guide our air anywhere we want to, irregardless of what our rig looks like, made of wood, made of aluminum, or made of tubes or whatever. We can figure out a way to attach this to it with, I'm thinking zip ties, or you know, maybe zip ties around it, a big enough zip tie to attach it to my frame over here. But we'll get to that. I'm going to figure that out and get it mounted, and then we'll, when we come back, we'll see how it all mounted up. But before we get to that, the next segment will be about the wind test. How much wind do we get out of this now that we have this tube on it and this diffuser versus the other fan that's still mounted to my rig that has this diffuser directly mounted to the fan. So when we'll come back, we'll be looking at the actual wind speed test and see how they compare. All right, so now I'm going to do a little bit of a unscientific wind test. But it's just something fun to do just to see where we're at in, you know, generally speaking, as far as wind speed. And first off, we're going to test this on the bench, which the tube is going across a 30-inch bench, and I actually have 12 inches, there's a 12-inch ruler here, in between the straightener and my wind meter over here. And I'll superimpose the wind meter in a second here. So what I'm going to do is set this up to 100% force on the fan back here, and we'll see what kind of airspeed we get on the front. And then what I'm going to do is try to just kind of hold the front where it is and kind of move the tube around and see if it makes any difference. I don't know how much difference it's going to make, but we'll just take a look at it and see how that works. Right, so let's go ahead, and the tube is nice and straight on the meter. And we'll turn it on and see where we are. And hopefully it doesn't get so loud you can't hear what I'm saying. All right, here we go. All right, so at 12 inches, we're at 11.5, it looks like. Not bad, actually. Remember, we're traveling about 30 inches through the tube to the straightener on the end here. And then we have 12 inches to go to the meter. And I'm going to do the same thing when I'm going to test over on the rig here with just a naked fan and do 12 inches in front of that and see what we get. We might get more speed out of this setup because we've got this straightener on the front. Now what I'm going to do is try to hold the straightener still and just kind of move the tube around and see if it, with a kink in the tube or a bend, if it makes any difference. And it actually went up. Well, that's pretty cool. We're getting more wind speed when it's got a bend in it. Let's see, I put it back down. Yeah, sure enough. Now that's something I was not expecting. I thought for sure we put a bend in it, it would make it go slower. But yeah, look at that. Wow. All right. Again, I'm going to go ahead and turn this off so you can hear me again. Hopefully that didn't drown me out too bad when I was speaking. So yeah, that really did surprise me, that when you actually put a bend in the tube, of course that was a straight up and down bend, that it actually increased the airspeed out of the front here. Wow, I was not expecting that. So anyway, without a bend and a pretty good slope to it, it looks like we had about, what was it, like 11.5 miles an hour. So we'll keep that in mind when we take the same test. And we're going to go over here to one of my fans. It's still on the P1. And I'm actually going to take the straightener off of that fan. And because I have a straightener on mine, if you saw the review I did before, and this is what it looks like, this actually increased the speed by twofold, twice as fast with this on front of that fan than when it wasn't. And that was when I first did the Sim Racing Studios Power Wind review back in March. You can actually go back and check that. But it's like 21 miles, over 21 miles an hour with this in front of it. So that was really a big step up in the fan speed. Right. So what we'll do now, and remember the app was at 100% with the fan power back there, and we'll do the same thing over on the rig. So when we come back, we're going to have it all set up over there on the rig and see what happens over there. All right, so now we have it set up for our speed test running off the fan that's on the rig. And this is where I normally have it when I'm driving without the tubes, which I normally will obviously be doing because the tubes for my kind of setup when I'm changing stuff around just aren't going to be feasible for me because I'd have to be taking them on and off all the time. Anyway, so we have the wind meter down here. We have the fan over here. Now the fan has the straightener on it, the high velocity straightener on it. So I just wanted to test it that way so you guys could see what I'm getting at 100% versus what the tube is putting out at 100%. Now again, the fan is only 12 inches away from this meter, and remember the tube was 12 inches plus around 30, so about 42 inches away from the meter because of the tube itself. Right, and that's typically, once you see it mounted to my rig, you'll see that it's about the same distance, so that's why I put it at that distance. Right, so just to demonstrate, this is a 12-inch rule, and yeah, it's actually a little more than 12 inches away from the front of the fan. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and crank this up. And remember, the application is at 100%. So 100% coming off of this air straightener right off the top of the fan at 12 inches. So let's see what we get. Come over here and crank this thing on and see where we're at. Here we go. Okay. So yeah, 19 miles an hour about, give or take a tenth. Seems to be jump. Oh, there goes 19. So yeah, we'll just call it 19 And yeah, let's go ahead and turn it back off. So you can see that with that straightener directly connected to the front of the fan and 12 inches away, that straightener does a heck of a job on putting the air out. That's 19 miles an hour. So yeah, that's versus the, what was it, 11? We were getting maybe even 12 on the other one. So yeah, we're definitely getting more wind with the direct like that. Now here's the thing. If we could take that adapter I talked about, and if you, on the closer look, they make one of these straighteners that will fit on the fan just like this one does, but it has that rib around it so we can actually attach a hose to it. So coming off of this straightener, going through the hose, and then coming out the other straightener, I have to imagine that it would definitely speed it up a little bit. How much, I don't know. I wish I had one of those to test, but I just didn't get one. So anyway, and again, this is not the most scientific way to test this, obviously. So it's just something that we can have a little fun and just get a general idea what the differences are. So next what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get the tubes installed on the rig and then do a test from the driver position and see how that works. Okay, so here's the final setup that I ended up with after toying around with it a little bit. And you can see I have both of these mounted on my flat wheel mounting surface that I have for my SimLabs P1 cockpit. And that's because of the wheel that I'm testing right now. And you can see, if you look down straight, that they're actually, let me get this squared up, I'm actually able to turn in or cant the diffusers on the front of these towards my body when I'm actually sitting in the seat. And that tended to be the best solution for me. And they're up high enough that they hit you about mid-body. And when your hands are on the steering wheel, you can actually kind of lift your elbows up, and that allows the air to get under your arms and into the armpit area, which when you're doing long stints is a welcome flow of air, trust me. So yeah, this really does a good job as cooling me. And what I'm going to do also is in a minute, we're just going to go ahead and, I got my wind meter set up over here. So what we're going to do in a minute here is turn it on and then see what kind of flow we have. So yeah, now we'll just go ahead and walk around the side. And while we're doing that, oh, before I do that, down here, I don't know how well this is going to show up, but there's one of those zip tie connectors that you can get for your 40 series or any series. I think they make it for just about any series, 15 and 10, 20, whatever. And anyway, that's what I'm using to zip tie this to the top of the plate here. And it works great. I really like these things for cable routing management. They are really great for that. So, and this thing you see hanging off the upright here on the wheel stand is obviously the mount where I had the fans originally. I got one over here and I got one over here, which actually that's what I'm going to use from day-to-day basis. I won't be using these tubes like I said before. I'm just testing them out because it's just more convenient for me moving things around and switching things around all the time. Yeah, every time I switch a wheel system I'd have to take them off. And I'm walking around here, you can see how they're routed underneath the mounters here, and they end up over here. So yeah, I had to be taking all that off every time I change things out. So it's just not what I'll be using, but I can see where if you have a static rig and you don't move stuff around a lot, this would be perfect for you. And you can see we have both fans mounted to the little housing there. I'm just, again, temporarily clamped it down. Nice solid clamps there. And we'll go around to the back here. You can see there's the little multi-port controller unit. And of course, there's our 4-amp power supply. And over here, you can see we're kind of connecting to the splitter. So now we have just one power supply running both fans. Very nice indeed. Right. So yeah, not much else to see here. Let's just go ahead and walk around the other side here. And again, there's the right side going underneath the monitor. It really worked out pretty well, actually. A little better than I thought. I was wondering, and that's the biggest thing I think about this type of system is how are you going to mount the end of these tubes? Not so much the ones on the fan, but the ends. And this is what I came up with. Again, there's another little cable management clip in there. Next is embedded in the profile, and then you run your zip ties through it. Really worked like a champ. It really saved me a lot of time in having to fabricate something or go look up 4-inch or 5-inch clamps, round clamps that I could use, and then maybe drill a hole, tap it, screw, you know, all that kind of mess. So this really works great. So what we'll do next is we'll go ahead and turn the fans on and just see how much we get as far as wind on the wind meter. And then, yeah, we'll just do some driving with it a little bit. So here we are. We're just going to go ahead and turn the fans on, and I'm going to pick up the airstream from the right side fan. They're both the same, actually, maybe give or take a tenth or two, but you know, close enough that both you feel the same force when you're actually sitting in it. You can't, my body's not able to tell the difference between, you know, a couple of tenths in the speed of the wind or not. So we'll go ahead and turn this on and see what we get. There we go. All right. So it looks like it is moving around a little bit. 6.2, 6.3. Actually, I've actually seen it high as 7. You can see how it moves around a few tenths at a time. So yeah, again, not the most scientific experiment, but close enough to give us an idea of the force of the wind that we're going to feel hitting us. Let me go ahead and turn that off. So again, I would like to have gotten those diffusers that I showed you, talked about before, and showed you on the website, that picture, and here's another picture of them again. I think those diffusers mounted to the front of the fans and then mounting the tube to that would actually increase that airflow. I'm not sure how much, but if I can get my hands on a couple of those, I'll probably retest and just see what it does, and maybe post a short clip or something on my YouTube channel just to say this is an update to it and this is the speed increase we got, if we got any at all, really. But I'm pretty sure we would. Anyway, so that's it for the test. Now what we're going to do is get in and just drive this puppy. All right, so here we are at Sebring in iRacing in a Ferrari 488, and yeah, first off, when you hit the straight, you're going to see that, and this is on auto, the wind is set to 100% and on auto in the application. You can see my hair is a good indicator here of how the wind increases as the faster the car is traveling. And yeah, even though we've only got 6.5 miles per hour or so on each side, with both of them combined, really it's plenty for me. And of course that's a subjective thing. Some people would want more or less, of course. And yeah, you can see from my hair here, though, like I said, it's when I'm going down the straights, it really kicks it up pretty good. And it's not aimed at my face. It's actually aimed at about the middle of my chest, abdomen area. And that's so I can actually kick my elbows up every once in a while and get the old armpits cooled down. So yeah, it's bouncing off my chest and then going up and lifting up the side of my hair there. So that's why it's not just blowing like crazy. But yeah, this really feels pretty good to me. And the other fans, when I'm running them normally on my rig, they have those straighteners that are the high velocity ones. And yeah, I keep the app at about 30% because anything more than that, and it starts chilling me out and getting a little bit too cold. Of course, that depends on the ambient temperature too. But yeah, I would keep this at 100% because it's not putting out as much as my direct fans would. But overall, this tube kit has really impressed me. It surprised me a bit too with how good the performance is. Again, I'd like to see those high velocity straighteners on these fans, but maybe someday I'll be able to test that. Okay, so we'll get to the final thoughts next. Final thoughts on the Sim Racing Studio upgrade kit. When I bought the regular double fan power wind package, I had to sort out a proper way to mount the fans to my sim racing setup. I ended up with the fans attached to my P1's wheel mount uprights, which, for my needs, was the right solution. But with folks using all types of desk or rig setups, I can see where the flexibility of running tubes from the fans can be a great solution for tuning the airflow to your own liking. And this kit makes that possible. Using this kit only requires that the user to switch out the front wind straightener, if you're even using one, and install the tube adapter. And that's easy enough. But if you want to use the fan base that combines two fans into one mountable unit, you will have to remove the PCB boards and install them in the new mount. If you watch that segment of the video, then you know it really isn't that difficult. We also saw the different wind speeds that are produced with the tubes installed and without them. As expected, the wind speed does take a hit when you're using the tubes. But we also have to consider that even though I measure the wind speed at the same distance from the front of the diffusers, the total distance that the air has to travel is going to be much longer because obviously the tubes are longer. And the test results seem to reflect that. In the end, I was testing the wind speed from my driving position, and we saw a final speed of around 6 to 7 miles an hour. I do think that if we added the airflow adapter in front of the fan before the tube, we would have seen an increase in that wind speed. This because we saw the wind speed double when I added the airflow straightener to a fan in my previous review of the 2-fan Power Wind package back in March of this year. Overall, I think this is a well-designed kit, and if you need more flexibility in the placement of your WindSim fans, then this solution could be what you're looking for. And SRS does offer these parts individually, and this allows you to supply your own tubes and zip ties and things like that that can be sourced from, well, just most any hardware store, I think. I'm Barry Rowland. Thanks again for watching the Sim Racing Garage channel. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button and help support what we do here at the SRG by visiting our website at simracinggarage.com.